It's now live.
Welcome to members and officers and members of the public, which to this Finance and Audit and Risk Committee. Presumably, hopefully, members of the public will be looking online or be looking later on. Before the meeting starts, I'd like to invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to confirm that the officers joining remotely can hear and be heard, and to explain how proceedings will work. Thank you.
How are you? Thank you, Chair. I'll just quickly do a roll call of officers in our Zoom call. Do we have Chris Wood?
Yes, we do. I can hear you. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Debbie Hanson?
Yes, I'm here. I can hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Rachel Morez?
I'm here. Thank you.
Thanks. Kieran Tumulty?
Yeah, I can hear.
Thanks. Joe Dufficy?
Yep, present. Thank you.
Thanks. Anne Banner?
Yes, present. Thank you.
Thank you. Ruben Ayavu?
Present, thank you.
Thanks. And Jerry Goodwin?
Yep, here. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. In accordance with council policy, this meeting is being audio recorded and filmed. The recordings will be available to listen to on ModGov and YouTube. If a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. Please wait for the chair's invitation before you begin. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room, and the result will be visible on the YouTube stream. In the event of a tied vote, the chair will have the casting vote. Are there any questions before we start the meeting? Nope. Back to you, Chair.
And then move on to item 1 then. Apologies for absence. I received apologies from councillors Morgan Derbyshire and Sean Noland. They are being substituted by councillors Bloxham and Hinchcliffe, respectively, where everybody's here, which is great. Are there any other further apologies for absence? No. We'll move on to item 2, which is the minutes from the 7th of September 22. I propose that we take these as read and approved as a true record, and the minutes of the meeting of the committee held on 7th of September 22. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Whedon seconding. Thank you. In that case, can we take it to the vote, please, Louis?
Chair, that's carried.
Thank you, Louis. We're going to move on to item 3 then, notification about other business. There is no other business today, so that's a quick one. 4 is our chair's announcements. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights set out under the chair's announcements on the agenda. And 2, as many of you will be aware, on the 24th of November, Councillor Judy Billing, MBE, passed away. Judy has been a North Arts councillor in Hitchin and Bearton for over 40 years and has been a county councillor since 2013. Our thoughts with Judy's family and friends in this sad time. I'd like to invite those present to join me in a minute's silence. We'll move on to item 5, which is public participation. there is no public participation for this meeting, which swiftly moves on to item 6, which is the Ernst & Young audit planning for the year ahead, 31st of March 22. And Debbie Hanson will be presenting. Debbie.
Thank you, Chair. I'm actually going to take the easy route on this one, and after a few high-level words of introduction, I'm going to hand over to Rachel, who's the manager on the audit, to talk you through the key elements of the plan. I did want to take a moment just to introduce the full team who you've largely got here today. So you've got myself as the signing partner. You've also got Rachel as your new manager for this year. And then also Kieran, who introduced himself briefly before, who's the lead senior on the audit. Kieran also worked on the audit last year and therefore gives continuity in terms of the knowledge he's got of North Hertfordshire. We will take the report as read, and therefore what Rachel's going to do in a few moments is just take you through the executive summary and really the key risks that we've identified and the main changes that we've got from the plan from last year. I would say it's a fairly standard plan for a district council, which I think is good news for you because we have completed all of our planning procedures now, and the risks that we've identified are set out in the plan, but they are the sort of risks you'd expect to see for any local authority the size of North Hertfordshire delivering the sorts of services that you do. So I think that's good in terms of there's nothing out of the ordinary that we've identified in terms of risks. I did want to just highlight the timetable for the audit. So we have now completed our planning and are bringing this plan to you today. In addition, we have actually also started our detailed work and are making good progress on that. We'll be completing that in the new year. Unfortunately, that won't be in time to hit your deadline for your sort of January meeting, but we will be completed in good time for March, if not before then. So I think that's positive in terms of the plans for completion this year. I'll now hand over to Rachel, really to just talk you through the key risks in the plan. Thank you.
Earlier for the purpose of this presentation, I will just focus on the key points we want to highlight.
Unfortunately, Rachel, you're garbled. We can't hear you, unfortunately. Can we try again?
Yeah.
Oh, that's better.
Hello. Yep. Okay, that's good then. So for the purpose of this presentation, I will just focus on the key points we want to highlight. I draw your attention to page 5 of the report, where we summarize the risks identified as part of our risk assessment procedures. I will then lay down our planned responses for each of these risks. Our first risk is misstatements due to fraud or error. So we are required by auditing standards to assume that management is in the
Sorry, Rachel, you're broken up again. Whatever you did to prepare it last time. Okay. Try again.
Okay. Let's do it one more time.
No, you're still garbling up. Yes. Rachel, if we can't resolve your issue with can Debbie take over, or you want to try it once more, Rachel, just to see?
Yep. Our first risk is misstatements due to fraud or error. That's okay. Sounding better?
Yes, that's good. Thank you. If we can keep it, that'd be great.
Yeah. So we are required by auditing standards.
It instantly gone garbled again.
Apologies, Chair. Would you like me just to step in for the moment? I don't know what's wrong because Rachel was on a call with us earlier, which was absolutely fine. So,
all right. Did you experience the same problem? No.
Are you fine with me, or is that a problem as well?
No, not. I was just wondering if you experienced the same problem we have just now.
Yeah, no, I also couldn't hear Rachel, which is a shame because she was planning to prepare. But I will take you through very briefly through the key risks.
If you could, that'd be great. Thanks.
Okay. So I think, as Rachel said, the first risk that we identify is driven very much by auditing standards and is the risk that we're required to include in all audit plans, be they local government or public sector, and that's a misstatement due to fraud and error. We largely focus our testing to address that risk around journals, material estimates, and also any unusual transactions that there may be in the financial statements. The second risk flows very much from that, which is where we look for where there's any particular risk of management override of controls. The risk we identify there is the inappropriate capitalisation of revenue expenditure. And I think, as we've referred to this committee before, that's because that's a way that basically management could take expenditure out of the revenue account, fund it from capital, thereby not impacting on council tax and general fund balances. The next significant risk we identified is investment properties. And that's because North Hertfordshire has a material balance of investment properties. Due to the nature of those assets in particular, they are subject to more estimation uncertainty than other classes of property, plants and equipment. And I think in particular since COVID, some of the volatility around the markets has meant that those valuations are more volatile, as I said, and subject to more change in estimations. So we identify that as a significant risk. The next page of the report really takes you through the areas of higher inherent risk, so not areas that we think are likely to result in material misstatement, but still require additional focus. The first of those is valuation of property, plant and equipment, which was in the plan for last year as well, and you will always see in your plan once you've got a material balance in that area. And again, that's because of the level of estimation and judgment. Pension liability valuation, very similar, a significant figure with estimates and uncertainties. And then going concern disclosure, which we have in there as an area of focus. Last year, we noted that as inherent risk. This year, we've just reclassified that really. So we're still doing the same work around that area. And that's really driven by auditing standards, which require auditors to be more sceptical and challenging around going concern disclosures. And also, again, the volatility that we've had since COVID and now with increasing inflation, Russia-Ukraine conflict, etc., means that those forward projections 12 months from the date of the audit report are really important in terms of the disclosures in the council's accounts. So I think it's just worth being clear that we're not saying at any point that the council is not a going concern in terms of the preparation of the accounts, but we do think that the disclosures around that future uncertainty are very important to a reader, and that's the focus of our work in that area. We also report to you on materiality and performance materiality on the next pages. So we've set that on the same basis as the prior year, which is 2% of gross expenditure, which results in materiality of around 1.4 million. And then we set a slightly lower level that we refer to as performance materiality, and that's the level at which we actually perform our audit procedures. So in effect, we build in a little bit of headroom between the procedures we undertake and the actual materiality we're working to allow for any potential unidentified errors and ensuring they don't have a material impact on the account. We've also noted at the bottom of that page that we look at some areas that are not material in terms of the value in the accounts, but are probably of particular interest to a reader, and therefore we audit those at a lower level. And those include remuneration disclosures, member allowances and related parties transactions. The only other thing I think I'd like to draw out from the report is the areas that we don't have in as a risk this year, which members may remember were in the plan last year, and that's accounting for government grants and then the NNDR appeals provision. In the prior year, those areas were very much driven by the impact of COVID in relation to the amount of government grants the council received and the risks around incorrect accounting for those as principal or agent and consideration of conditions related to those grants. And then NNDR appeals provision was again reflecting the fact that there may be higher levels of appeals coming through due to COVID. We didn't find any significant issues in either of those areas last year and therefore have removed those risks from the audit plan for the current year. I'm very happy to take any questions or comments, and hopefully if any questions come in that Rachel would like to answer, her mic might be working properly now, but as I said, I'll take the rest of the report as read, but very happy to take any questions that members may have.
Thank you. Have we any questions for Debbie? Oh, yes. Yeah. Councillor Home.
Thank you. Yeah, really, it's just we see that the audit differences are 0.071 million. Where does that number come from? Why we get some £71,000 in there? Is that a number that means something? Is it a percentage of something, or is it just a number?
It is just a percentage. So we calculate that as a percentage of our overall materiality level, and that's a standard percentage across all of our audits. So from my recollection, I think it's 5% of our materiality. We could set that at a lower level if members would like to have things reported less than £71,000, but I think that's probably a reasonable level to which to report unadjusted differences to you.
Thank you. No, I don't see it as being needing changing, in my opinion, anyway. And I think it's now I understand where you got the number from. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. One other thing I did forget to say is welcome to John Cannon, our independent person. I didn't actually identify you earlier. I should have done. Apologies. Welcome. Has anybody else got any questions for Debbie on this subject? Nothing's popping up. Okay. Debbie, thanks very much. And thanks to Rachel. It's a shame the technology wasn't working properly for us. In that case, we'll move on to item 7, SAF's update on anti-fraud plan 2022-23. And can I call upon Nick Jennings to present?
Good evening, Chair. This is our second report for this committee this year. We produce 3 each year on progress with delivery of the anti-fraud plan developed with officers across the authority. So this is an update for members. I'm just going to pick out the highlights from the report because I'm aware that everybody will have read this in great detail already. So on section 11, we mention International Fraud Awareness Week. This is an activity that we support through North Herts Council and the other authorities that the Shared Anti-Fraud Service works with. During the week, we use the first part of the week to push messages out to the public around why fraud and fraud prevention is important in protecting the public purse, in particular the funds that the North Herts Council provides. The second half of the week, we focus more on thanking the public for supporting us with that work by providing some details on the types of cases that have been investigated or the types of fraud that we've found as a result of matters that have been raised by the public. And this is part of a framework of fraud awareness that we use throughout the year. So we've just finished this particular campaign. Prior to this, we ran one around schools admissions fraud. Moving into the new year, we'll start to look at council tax billing and fraud around that as well. So it's part of an ongoing campaign, but important to raise because North Herts Council is one of those organisations that supports International Fraud Awareness Week. I mentioned earlier, actually, during the training for members, the training that we provide for staff. And so far, this year, that's include staff working in housing services, looking at the fraud risks around the housing allocation process, anti-money laundering training for staff in legal services, procurement and the finance teams, and then the training that we're continuing to deliver towards the end of this financial year. If I just pick up on section 14, where we talk about allegations of fraud, referrals for us is allegations of fraud, but it's terminology that we use. This year, we've seen a significant reduction in the volume of fraud being reported. We're keeping a quite close eye on that. I suppose it's a good trend that if we see a reduction in reporting, it might be an indicator that the volume of fraud affecting the authority is reducing as well, and the prevention work that we're doing is being more effective, but we're not going to be complacent with that. We'll keep a close eye on fraud reporting and ensure that we encourage staff and members to report fraud where they suspect it. We do break down in those tables there who's reporting fraud to us. The public continue to report matters into the service, and that gives us great confidence that if they've got the concerns, they've got confidence that the authority will do something about it. We just mentioned in section 16 and 17 the number of live cases that we have at present, the value of some of those cases, as well as the outcomes and value from the cases that have been investigated and closed so far this year. And then towards the end of the report, if I can just pick up on section 27, we mentioned there the council tax framework that's in place for all of the borough and district councils across Hertfordshire. North Herts Council has made use of that framework this year. We've recently received the results from that, and that's shown that 194 properties which were previously shown as long-term empties on the council tax register have been brought back into use. They're back in occupation, and through the new homes bonus scheme, that will raise some significant additional revenue for the authority this year. And then section 29, really pleasing to report that we've ensured the council's compliance with the National Fraud Initiative. This is a national as you suspect, data collection exercise that takes place through October every second year, and involves every local authority in England and Wales. The collection of data, including your payroll data, council tax data, electoral roll, and variety other various other data sets. That's shared with the Cabinet Office. It's matched to other data sets, both from local authorities as well as third-party organisations that submit their data in, and that allows us to identify potential fraud by using the volume of data to give us an indicator of where there might be some fraud within those various data sets. So we expect to see the output from that exercise between February and March next year, and that's when we'll again begin to work very, very closely with officers to look at the output from that particular exercise. And then if I could just mention lastly, Chair, we've provided the key performance indicators for the Shared Anti-Fraud Service, which were agreed with officers. That's shown at Appendix B. Very pleased again to report that all of those KPIs that we set for this year are on target for delivery. I'm happy to take questions at that point.
Thank you, Nick, and also thank you for your training earlier this evening. Are any questions for Nick? We have nobody popping up on the screen. In that case, I've got here, we should note the work of the council officers and the Shared Anti-Fraud Service in delivering the 2022-23 anti-fraud plan. This doesn't require a vote, does it? This is just noting. No, okay. Unless anybody objects to that, we're just going to note that. Thank you, Nick, for your presentation. Moving on to item 8 then, SIAS progress report, progress update 2022-23. Chris Wood to present.
Thank you, Chair. Earlier today, I think I mentioned that I was concerned about my voice lasting the course for the day, but I just wanted to confirm that actually everyone could hear me. It seems to be a new risk for those dialing in.
We can hear you loud and clear. Thanks,
Lovely.
Chris.
Thank you. I will take my report as read, but I had wanted to update the 2 weeks since this was published. I've seen quite a bit of progress since that time, so I thought I'd draw attention to that as I went through the report. A couple of things I do need to draw your attention to as I go along, though. On page 89 of your pack, there's a list of the audits that we've completed since the last audit committee, as well as an update I should give on the future ways of working audit. I know Joe's in this meeting as well, Joe Dufficy, but that field work is now concluded and we're not far off issuing a report on that one, as I understand. High priority recommendations. There's one new high priority recommendation to bring to the committee's attention. That's the one out of the care line operations audit, and members will be aware of that one having received a copy of the report. Something which the audit committee are required to approve and therefore which I have to bring to your attention are the audit plan amendments in section 2.9 of the report. We had to use a couple of days out of contingency to conduct a Green Homes grant audit. The committee may be aware that one of the many requirements of various government grants is that internal audit and the chief executive or managing director sign off on all government grants, essentially saying that the money was spent for its intended purpose. Down on the performance, I'm pleased to say that in the last couple of weeks, we've been catching up nicely with quite a bit of the field work. We've now delivered 50% of the plan, which feels like a milestone in the challenging year that we've experienced. And although the projects haven't moved on, this is in the table at 211, there are a number that are in quality assurance with some draft reports due imminently. So basically, I'm somewhat happier with progress, although there's obviously a lot still to deliver. The last update I wanted to give to the committee was relating to the paragraphs from 2.15 onwards, and I note there's a duplication of numbers as I'm talking to you. at 212. But one of the things that's happened with our resourcing this year, as we write there, is with our vacancies, and then we've subsequently utilised the full capacity of BDO as our co-providers. We've had to procure 200 days additional work for the partnership. A quotation process was held as outlined here, and 2 providers have received the additional work from us, and that's put us in a position where we've been able to allocate all audit work across the partnership, including North Herts. So although I watch continued delivery with a higher degree of confidence now that that work's been allocated, I still can't give a 100% guarantee we will have delivered the plan by the end of the financial year, but certainly the aim is to have completed our work and be in a position to provide your annual assurance opinion by April, or the end of April next year, when these are provided, usually in May, I believe. So somewhat more confident, both with progress, as I say, in the delivery of the internal audit plan, and in terms of our ability to allocate all our work out and put ourselves in a much stronger position to deliver that. So I'll take any questions there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Have the members got any questions or Chris? Councillor Home.
Yeah, thank you. My only concern really around 216, 217, when you do, as you mentioned, you're a bit delayed and you have some exposure in terms of hours, in terms of days, and how you're going to recover for those. As a result of perhaps potential, have you put a plan in place just in case, so that you will address the issues which you deem and agree with officers to be a higher priority, just in case that you can't fulfill those commitment days or get the resources to fulfill those commitment days? Is there a plan in place to say highlight and therefore target those areas of concern as a higher priority?
Through you, Chair, if I may answer. So the first part of the plan was to get the additional resource in place. The second part of the plan is you'll be aware that there are high priority and medium priority audits in the plan, and our aim would be to finish the high priority ones exactly as it says on the tin, as a higher priority, and focus on the completion of those. I am confident, though, that given that everything is allocated out, we're about to go through a process of making sure that not only we have the resource in place, but actually that officers are ready to do those audits. There are a number that were scheduled for Q4 anyway. But we'll be checking that officers are fully aware that those audits are due to start, and that they're engaged with the process. That applies not just here at North Herts, but actually across all of our partnership, because any deferrals or cancellations or inability to engage and mobilise work actually affects the partnership as a whole. So we're engaging in that process across the partnership to maximise the chances of delivering enough work, and those that have been prioritised in particular within the North Herts plan, which, as it says in, I think it's Appendix A or B, if I flick across, yeah, you'll see it on page, that's a bit obscured, but I think that's 94 of the pack. It's the high priority audits listed at the top of that appendix. Would certainly be our aim to deliver those in the first instance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Chris. Actually, I was just looking at this resource gap of 200 days, and you're recruiting people for the partnership. Is that reducing that 200 days down to something like, I don't know, what's it reducing it down to?
So the 200 days, Chair, is across the partnership as a whole, and we've engaged in an external quotation process for 2 further external providers to support BDO, our current providers. We, as mentioned, utilised their capacity to the full, should we say. We're also engaged in a current recruitment process, which is out in the market at the moment. We are finding, as across the entire internal audit sector and quite another number of other sectors as well, that it's extremely challenging finding what I call experienced audit staff and audit managers, whereas we've had a lot of success in recruiting trainees. Got some excellent talent that's come into the service, but they require that development time. So the benefits at that level are sort of bear fruit in the future as opposed to immediately. We have a sort of grow your own strategy, which is quite common with other internal audit services, as that's the way forward at the moment.
Oh, thanks. Well, I'm guessing that with that recruitment and development going on, that the 200 days should be drastically reduced.
Yes,
right?
absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank you. Would anybody else like to ask any questions of Chris? No? Okay, and then what we need, thank you, Chris, for your presentation and answering the questions. We'll take this report as noted and we'll move on to item 9 then. Item 9 is the governance statement. Ruben, can you present?
Yep, thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. As stated, this report brings to you the annual government statement for 21-22 and the corresponding action plan for the year 22-23. This is your opportunity to review and comment on the draft action plan before it's finalised, as soon as possible, before the external audit is completed. Just going to go through some of the background to give you the whys and the hows of what we've done. So the council, as a relevant authority, is required to conduct an annual review of the effectiveness of its internal controls and governance and prepare an annual governance to demonstrate that. The principles that we align ourselves against are those of the local government framework of 2016, which is from the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy, which is SIPFA, and the Society of Local Authority Chief Executives, which is SOLACE. The draft annual governance statement is prepared after a self-assessment by the leadership team against these principles. There are 7 in total, and then they are scored against the examples that are given and the details that the leadership team present. That process has happened, and the policy team are now in the process of making some amendments, and then we'll redraft that before the statement of accounts comes for approval. What else do I want to say? The document at Appendix A is a synthesized version of the annual government statement itself. The self-assessment runs to 99 pages, which is a dense read, so we've kind of made it a considerably shorter, but both documents will be available on the external website at a future date. And we will be sending all of this to our external partners to review for their comments as well. And that's all I want to say really at the moment. I'm happy to take questions from the committee.
Members, have we got any questions for Ruben? John Cannon.
Hello there, thank you. It reads well. I just noticed on Principle F, it just reads light. It's one of the shorter sections, and conscious of the materials that come to this committee, I just wondered if there's an appetite to say anything more. Appreciate that the committee does oversee a raft of measures, and maybe we don't want to spell it all out in total detail, but as a shorter section, I wondered if there's an opportunity or an appetite to say a bit more about things like the effective financial management, some of the key measures that might be in place within the organisation.
Ruben?
We can do. I think the self-assessment document goes into far more detail, but if the committee members feel that we need to put a bit more in there, we can absolutely do that. I can have a talk with Ian about what key things you'd like to see in there as well.
Thank you, Ruben. John, I think you did mention some specifics there, did you? What you'd like to see, or maybe what we'd like to see.
There's an opportunity perhaps to reflect more of what comes to this committee. I'm not trying to direct at all. It was more of an open question. Are we happy that that's one of the shorter sections in the document? And if the answer is yes, then that's fine by me. It's just struck me that that one is a little shorter than the others. And there's a lot that could be said if we wanted to.
Ruben, can we take that on board then?
Yeah, absolutely.
Expand
Making
that
a note
area?
now. Yeah, of course.
I'm not sure we won't be able to do it today, will we? Is that something
No.
you need to bring to us in January?
Yep, I can do, or I can certainly email members between now and then to get some comments about what sort of things. I can sort of provide some headlines about what they would like to see included.
I think that'd be incredibly grateful.
Yep, not a problem.
Okay, well, anybody else got any questions for Ruben? No. The recommendations of the committee is to recommend. The committee is recommended to review and comment on the draft AGS action plan for it to be finalised for approval as soon as possible after the council's external audit has been completed. I'm going to ask for just a clarification. Ian, this is in draft at the moment. If the committee is to approve it, we just talked about an extension of information. Would we need to defer that till January?
So there is requirements. There is requirements to approve the annual government statements prior to approving the statement of accounts. The statement of accounts are likely to be brought back to you at your March meeting. So given this is quite a long document, you don't want to be trying to write this on the hoof in March. That's why it comes to you before that. So there's plenty of time between now and March to sort of get that one paragraph added based on John Cannon's comments, and they'll come back to you in March to approve it. So I don't think there's any kind of hurry or rush to bring it in January, but certainly in March we'll bring it back to you and we can approve it, fully formally approve it then.
Thank you, Ian. In that case, would we just note that we've heard it so far? Yeah,
I think we've taken on board the comments being received, and we'll tell us, and then just to note that you've seen the report.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to item 10 then, the council tax reduction scheme. Councillor Ian Albert to present. You've got 10 minutes.
I'll and as long as there's no politics required, I'll take all of that time. First of all, I think it's quite a significant document, and I think to obviously to thank sort of Joe Dufficy, Geraldine Goodwin, Anne Banner, Mark Scaines, and all the team for and there's been a lot of work gone into this. Committee will recall that at the September meeting, a report was presented providing an update on the proposed changes for the reduction scheme. The time the consultation was just about to start, and analysis was ongoing into the impact of those who would gain and lose from the proposed changes. That work's now completed, and the paper's now in front of you here for the scheme for 23-24, which will be taken to Cabinet next week and onward for recommendation to Council in January. Purpose obviously of bringing this report is to keep the committee updated and obviously to seek any further comments. A full review of the scheme was one of the key projects included in the delivery plan. Work has gone on throughout the year and has been supported by a specialist consultant who works with a number of other authorities. The key aims are set out in the paper, but particularly we wanted to provide the greatest support to those who need it most and to simplify the scheme more generally. The review has led us to propose moving to a banded scheme. A banded scheme will enable us to meet those key objectives mentioned, and that's set out in paragraph 8.5.4, which shows that scheme that is currently being proposed, and hopefully that's obviously gives some additional explanations. A key aim of the review, as I say, was to provide the greatest support to those who need it. And while the proposed scheme does that, there will inevitably be some who will not benefit from these changes and will receive a reduction in entitlement or end entitlement altogether. We've been through a lot of iterations of this and data modeling to limit that number. Appendix A shows the numbers and percentage of increases and decreases. And it's worth noting that the vast majority, 81%, will either receive an increase in entitlement or indeed no change. 40.3% of people will receive an increase in entitlement. Appendix A also shows where the majority of reductions and increases will occur in relation to the household income, along with some graphics to show a sample of how some of those calculations have been made. It's worth reiterating that we will provide discretionary support to those to support those who experience exceptional hardship, and these cases will be considered on an individual basis, and any hardship support will be for a specified period of time. So I think managing that transition from where we are now to going forward is going to be really, really important, and that's something we're very sensitive of. Appendix B summarises the responses. We've received 481 responses. The majority agree with the proposal to move to a banded scheme. A number of comments relating to impact on pensioners and those in receipt of single person discount. Both of those remain unaffected by these proposed changes. But a very positive comment from our partners in North Hart Citizens Advice, who certainly believe that the new scheme should benefit those who really need it. I think it will both be fair and is very client focused, which they believe is great. I'm aware certainly there was I think a potential sort of question from John around from John Cannon around the value of losses. And let me just try and sort of pick that up now. But obviously I'll more than happy and the team obviously more than happy if to obviously maybe go a little further if John has sort of further questions around that. So I think the value of reductions here ranges from indeed very small amounts, pennies indeed, up to about £29 a week, depending on the individual circumstances. And looking specifically at the 267 reductions, those are entitled but to a lower than current amount. 84 will lose less than £2 per week. 42 indeed are less than £1 a week. 109 will lose between £2 and £8, and indeed 36 of those are indeed less than £5. 30 will lose between £8 and £10. There's 37 people would lose between £10 and £20, and 23 of those are in the range of £10 to £15. And finally, there are 7 that range from £20 to £29. And of those, 5 have a weekly income of between £400 to £500 per week. But obviously, on the other side, it's important to say that 372 people on an income of less than £100 a week will now receive the maximum discount of 100%. But I think the important thing to mention, I think in relation to those losses, we always recognise that there is a transition, and that's where our discretionary scheme will come in, and we'll certainly look to working with our residents to make sure that they're, where this change is a detriment for them, that we'll work to be able to support those through that discretionary scheme. But as I say, clearly the overwhelming number of people will actually receive an additional and positive benefit to this. So I hope colleagues here will I think appreciate and both actually support the changes we've tried to make here, and enabling us to increase the overall level of support for the lowest income households in particular. And I commend the scheme to the committee, and obviously I'm very happy to receive sort of comments that we can take to Cabinet next week, and obviously to full council in January. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. I just want a question for myself, actually. The discretionary funds, is that triggered by some sort of appeal? Is it?
It's not. It won't be. But it won't be an appeal as such. It will be, I think, obviously a resident contacting us, or indeed, obviously, we can be proactive in contacting those that we know that won't receive the benefit or in the future scheme, and we can then obviously ask them to formally then to apply to the discretionary scheme as part of that. So it could be a contact, but equally we can be proactive about and from our end about it.
Well, it's good to hear that we do you think we consider we will be proactive about it, or is to be decided?
I think what we would be looking to do, I think, on these ones is to be able to contact those people that because we're going to send them a letter to say that you're not entitled, and then obviously that we would then receive that any feedback and say to them that discretionary claim is available to them, and here's the details of how you can make that application.
Councillor Hone.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Obviously, a lot of work gone into this. And I think it's commendable that we are looking to support those who need the support the most. My concern really is previous subject we had today, which is fraud, and how we have what we have in place here to ensure that those people who we're trying to get the money to do get the money to them, and that we don't see perhaps those who are perhaps not needing the same level of support, who are perhaps not attempting to commit fraud, either on purpose or accidentally. What do we have in place to make sure those things don't happen?
Ian, can I ask you to respond?
Yeah, perhaps if I can ask either Joe or Jerry to pick up the arrangements that we've got for around that sort of fraud protection element for it.
Yeah, actually, I think I was just going to suggest that Anne responds to that one.
Oh, Anne's going to respond. Okay, thank you.
If I may, Chair, thank you. What's actually happening is, with a change in how benefits are calculated and processed, is we now receive that information directly from the Department of Work and Pension through a thing called an Atlas file. And that Atlas file actually tells us real time what somebody is earning. So on that basis, if anybody's working and earning, we don't need them to declare their income to us, we know. So the actual chances of them committing fraud are much, much lower now than they have been in the past.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Hone?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much indeed. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Anne. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. The consultation that we've done on this looks very strongly in favour, though I was interested by question 27, which is, are the respondents actually receiving council tax reduction at present, of which only 26% were? And I couldn't help but notice that figure is not the same, but similar to the proportion of people that were against the changes to the scheme. So from the bulk data, obviously everything looks very much in favour of this, but I wonder if has there been any work done to look at whether there is a correlation between the answer to 27 and the overall in favour or not to the scheme?
Ian?
Again, perhaps if Joe would like to pick that one up for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So yes, you're quite right to point that out. And we did actually do quite a bit of work in terms of promoting the consultation as widely as we could. We did that through partners such as Settle and our registered landlords, and through Citizens Advice, and we promoted it on our social media channel and through our outgoing emails, and just generally as widely as we could. And we wanted to get those in receipt of council tax reduction to respond so that we were getting their views as well. However, as you rightly point out, the vast majority actually weren't in receipt. And whilst we can't link directly the answers to the different questions, and we don't collect any kind of personal information from respondents either to be able to kind of go back to them on it. We also had quite a lot of responses from pensioners as well, who expressed some concern that they would be affected by the proposed changes, and of course, as Ian said in his introduction, they won't be. So I think there is some correlation to be made there, but we can't directly link them.
Does that answer your question?
Come back on one.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And And I guess obviously the challenge also, for us is that is around, and we, it's one of the things we discussed with the team through the consultation. I think as you'll see from there that if you look at the percentage of responses from the, if you like, under 55s, it's much lower than, and it is those people that are where they're claiming are going to the most impacted by that. And so I think it's a challenge in the consultations in trying to actually how we target, and it's something we need to continue to think about, and indeed across other surveys as well, in making sure that we get responses from all the age groups, ethnicities, and other groups across the community. But it does tend to be the older age groups that reply to the surveys.
John Gannon.
Hi, thanks for expanding on the impact where the reductions will occur. Noted the range of reduction ranges from a matter of pennies to something like up to £29 per week. So I think that we're getting there. It's becoming more clear. I would be more comfortable if we could pinpoint in which income brackets those reductions hit, so then we can understand who is being hit and to what extent. Appreciate that there are ranges, but I'm not clear on in which brackets they will manifest. However, if we look around it, what I'm hearing is that there will be discretionary relief for the duration of the 23-24 year. That's a good thing. My follow-up concern really is that having made the transition to the new scheme next year and council tax is going up by 3%, does it effectively lower the bar for relief in subsequent years? We're setting a new standard next year, and it's going to have a domino effect forever after. And I'm still not sure in which income brackets the greatest impact will be felt. So I just would like to highlight that, and I wonder if there's any further thought, comment that we could discuss today on that, please.
Ian.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, have we got the detail there on the income bracket sort of numbers around that for John?
Yeah, so the income brackets are included in Appendix A. They show, so there's two tables, one that shows the increases and the weekly income bands. And that's broken into categories. So, for example, single person with no children, with children, etc. And likewise, there's a table that shows the reductions with the income brackets as well.
Page 133, I think that's the...
Yes, it does seem to answer. Does that answer the question, John, on page 133, or not, in your view?
That's where what sparked my question. I saw the number of people in various bands. These people will get a reduction of some sort, but it's not clear to me the scale of the reduction for those people in those bands. Some are going to get a reduction of pennies, some will get a reduction of £29 a week. If, for example, someone is in an income bracket band of earning up to £245 a week, and they're the ones who are going to receive £29 a week less, that's quite a big proportion of their income. And my question, therefore, is, do we know who is going to be hit, how much, and are they going to get full relief for that reduction this year? And has any thought been given to what that relief requirement might be in subsequent years, so that they're on a level playing field against where they are this year? You see what I mean?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, I haven't got that. Joe, have we got that sort of detail to hand, or are we happy to kind of maybe come back with a further response on that?
Yes, we have got that information, but not to hand at that level of detail, and apologies if I misunderstood the information that was being requested. We certainly do have that, and we have looked at that, so we can pull that together into a presentable format and circulate that or share that with John.
You know how long that might take, Joe?
It shouldn't take very long because, as I say, we do have the data. Perhaps if sometime next week would be okay.
Yeah, I'm just trying to gauge how long it might take to get the information to the committee and John. Yeah, I'm sure a week sounds fine to me. Is anybody else got a issue with that? Right. Okay. Thank you, Joe. That's great. Oh, yeah, sure.
Chair, if I may, sorry.
John.
Thank you. Much appreciated. I'm not looking to create work for anybody. The answer is more important than the question. So if the answer is that regardless of who is impacted, they're going to get full relief all year, then that's probably more important than analysing the data. But at the moment, I don't feel quite informed. So if you can fill me in, that would be great.
Thank you, John. Are there any other questions for Ian or his team? No. I personally have got no problem to take this to the cabinet and recommend it. Is there anybody who's got against us taking this and recommend it to the cabinet? No, good. The recommendation is there's quite a lot of recommendations here, but I don't feel that we need to read them out. This really is, should we take this to the cabinet and recommend it? And I think we should. Nobody's descending, so I'm going to say we duly noted it. And well, I don't believe we need a vote for this, do we? We do need a vote for this. All right. Okay. We do need a vote. Right. In that case, the vote would be to take this council reduction scheme forward and recommend it to the cabinet. Yes would say yes, we want to do it, and then yes, no, we don't. Oh, sorry, yes, I need a proposer and a seconder, please. Yes. Any proposing? Yeah. Councillor Whedon. Seconding. Yeah. Councillor, glass obviously. Hinchcliffe. Sorry about that. Thank you for that. Yes, please go to the vote.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you, Lee. Moving on to item 11, the annual review of the contract procurement rule. Ian Cooper to present.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies, you've got me for a few reports in a row now, so I'll take you through the rest of the reports of the evening. So the first of those is the contract procurement rules. This is in the recommendation of referral onto council for them to approve the adoption of these, should you recommend onto them. It is a minor light touch review. We are looking forward to, expecting the procurement bill next year, which will bring some quite fundamental, potentially changes to procurement, and therefore a light touch review this year, just to sort of neaten around the edges. The changes are detailed in section 8 of the report. So just to briefly go through those, the first of those is the fact that procurement has moved back into resources from legal and community. So some changes need to reflect that move. And the other ones are in there basically sort of tidying up where the rules weren't quite as clear as they should be. Just to clarify that now we have a full-time procurement officer, our focus is on the documents that sit behind the procurement rules, the explanation for officers to make sure they adopt them properly and are fully kind of conversant with what they're saying and make it easy for them. So that is our focus during this year, to do that work so that it's easy to understand, easy to follow, and then we'll do a full review of the procurement rules next year based on that procurement bill and any other kind of more presentational change you want to do to the next year. So yeah, looking for your approval as a committee to take them forward to council in January.
Thank you, Ian. In that case, the recommendation on the committee considers the proposed changes in recommends their full adoption to the full council. I guess I can propose it myself. No? I could be a proposer. I propose it. Could I have a seconder, please? Yeah, Councillor Weeder. Seconding. However, are there any comments before we move on to the vote? Thank you, Isaac. No, not votes come in. In that case, Louis, can we take us to the vote?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you, Louis. Thank you, members. Moving on to item 12, half-year update on risk management. And as Ian said, he's in the chair again.
Thank you, Chair. Back in years gone by, we would have had quarterly reports going to committee around risk, which included looking at the detailed risk proposals in terms of new corporate risks. Because we've now integrated that into the council delivery plan, and that's being considered by overview and scrutiny on a quarterly basis. This gives the chance for this committee to focus on risk governance, which is more what it's supposed to be doing, rather than day-to-day risk management, sort of day-to-day risk reviews. So this report is the sort of first version of that risk governance review, and this is the first half-yearly report on that. So I'm going to pick out a few highlights. But always happy for any feedback from this committee in terms of content of what's in the risk report, as it is the first time I'm presenting it to you. And also you'll note in recommendation 2.3 that asking you about any particular training on risk you would like to receive. So happy for any comments on that as well, just to kind of improve your role and make it easier for you to consider risk in that regard. So looking at some highlights of the report, if I first of all focus on the start of paragraph 8.2.2, all councillors have access to Pentana, which is our risk management software, which gives full details of all our risks. It is only available via the internet, I'm afraid. It's not a public website version possible. But yeah, if you log in through Citrix onto the intranet, you can access it. And there are user guides on there, which we've recently reviewed to make them as easy to use as we can. But we're also happy as officers to give you sort of more focused help as well in accessing that if you wish to. So the table there, table 1, is a table we're going to plan to repeat on a regular basis. Each report we have of these will help build a picture over time, which shows you how risks are moving. We don't want risks to just sit on the risk register with a score and never move. The idea of risk is you do something about it. So risks should move around over time, either because circumstances change or you've taken action to mitigate those risks. So the important thing about the table is a summary of where the numbers are going to. So it's good, I suppose, to see that we've got a total of 21 risks with reduced risk score over the last 6 months. 6 have got an increased risk score, but we have still got quite a few where the risk hasn't changed, and that does happen sometimes. But obviously, we would look to what's being done about those risks to make sure that we know why those risk scores aren't moving. So that's a good focus, I think, for sort of build a picture over time about what's going on. Second point to note is in 8.2.3, and that notes that the risk reviews are happening in the vast majority of cases, happening on time. Risks are being looked at, they are being reviewed, and managers are aware what's going on with those. So yeah, I think that's probably where I'll stop in terms of an introduction, but happy to take any other questions in terms of that report. And again, reiterate a request for any comments around this report and also any training that you might want in future.
Thank you, Ian. I certainly would like to know more about Pentana, is it? I'm not sure if I've come across it before. Maybe a neglect on my part, but I certainly haven't seen it. So it'd be great to know anything about that. I don't know if the committee members are aware of how to use it and how to view it. Councillor Davis.
Thank you. I had a question on one of the risks, if I may.
Absolutely, yes.
It was the empty home strategy risk, which if my reading of the report is accurate, we score all of our risks on there their impact along the x-axis and their likelihood on the y-axis, and we have what we originally assessed it at, what we think the current assessment is, and what we would like that assessment to become. This risk, it seems like our strategy is to reduce its likelihood but increase its impact. Is that intentional? And if so, I'd be curious to know the logic behind that.
I'll hand that to Ian.
That is a good point. I see what you're referring to. I'll investigate that. Yes, that would be not normal. Let me investigate that, and I'll have to come back to you. Obviously, I know about some of these risks, but not all of them. There's quite a lot on there. But yeah, I'll certainly go back to the service manager and work out what's going on with that, and certainly update you around what's going on with that one.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, George. Are there any other questions for Ian? Any other comments? Ian, have we got a few days to comment, or we're supposed to comment this evening?
I mean, this is intended to be a regular report you'll receive. Plan currently is that every half year you receive these reports. So always happy to refresh them as we go through, but also happy to receive questions. We do have a quarterly risk and performance management group, which there is a standing invite to all members of FAR and to ONS now to attend. That is held during the day. I will send out an invite for the next one. That gives councillors and officers a chance to meet and discuss risk and projects in more detail, and look into some of the stuff that's going on with more time to look at them in detail. So yeah, always chance to engage with risk, and we'll do more around promoting the use of Pentylenum as well. So we'll send out the links again, let you know where the materials about how to use it is, as well as offer that again, that officer training as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Ian. That's great. Councillor Hinchcliffe.
Thank you, Chair. I may well be misunderstanding this, but I just want to ask about the risk regarding to local plan implementation. Obviously, we've voted to adopt the local plan now. Was the risk assessment made before that decision was made, or is that the high likelihood, high impact risk assessment based on some further issues beyond the point of adopting the plan?
Ian,
yeah. So we are still in the challenge period in terms of potential for review of that decision. So until that period is elapsed, I'm aware that we are still aware of that, and therefore the risk will remain high until that period has lapsed. So that is why it's still of that rating at the moment. We will review it after that period has elapsed, and we would look to bring that risk down.
Thanks, Ian. Does that answer your question? I'm interested to know what is, or remind me, what is the period?
It ends just before Christmas, the 20-something of December. I don't know exactly the date, but around then.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Anybody else like to ask some questions? No? Okay. Well, the recommendations are that we, the Finance and Audit and Risk Committee note and provide recommendations to Cabinet on the half-yearly risk management update. The Finance and Audit and Risk Committee note and provide recommendations to the Cabinet to review of the risk management framework, and the Finance and Audit and Risk Committee comment on the type of risk management training they would like to see going forward. So this report is presented to FAR for comment before referable to Cabinet. Are there any questions still outstanding? If not, I propose propose this motion to refer this report to Cabinet. Can I have a seconder, please? Yeah. Councillor Weeder. Chloe, can we take it to vote, please?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you, Louis. That moves us on to item 13. I was just looking at the time, make sure we're still at 20 to 9. So I don't propose a break at this point. Section 13, item 13, should I say, second quarter review budget monitoring 22 to 23, and Ian Cooper to present. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. This adopts the same format that you hopefully remember from last meeting. So I will just do a quick skim through the key highlights of the report. As with the last time you saw this report, table 3, which starts on page 251 of the report pack, details all the big movements. You will see some quite big ones there, the main one being Treasury investment interest income. As we'll come on to the next report, there has been some slippage on the capital programme, which means you've got therefore have more cash to invest, and interest rates do continue to increase, which therefore generates quite a lot of income. Unfortunately not offsetting, as I said last time, the level of inflation that we're facing at the same time, but still in terms of the revenue budget, it is quite a big number in terms of forecast additional income. Throughout the rest of the table, we've got some other big movements, the next one being the leisure centre management fee income. SLL still continues to recover well in terms of the use of the leisure centres, particularly swimming pools, and swimming lessons and casual swimming usage is doing really well. Fitness in terms of sort of gym usage is still a bit behind, and a bit more struggling to recover, but overall income is doing well, and not too far away from pre-pandemic levels in terms of total income, which is a really good sign. And the other big movement on there is in relation to planning income, and the shortfall on planning income for the reasons set out on the table. We are in a general economic slowdown, so when you get good things in terms of increased interest rates, you get inflation, but you also get less planning and less house building going on. So all these things kind of link to the same sort of themes. In terms of other bits to highlight to you in that same table, whilst it's not a big movement, following the request at the last meeting on page 251, have got a bit in there about the North Hearts Lottery and the number of tickets sold and the income being generated from that. So that was following a request from this meeting last time, just to have a bit more information on that. And then moving through the report, tables 4 and 5, which are on pages 254 and 255 respectively. They cover our main income streams, big sources of income. The first one shows how they're comparing against the original budget, and flags them either as red, amber or green based on the forecast of either achieving the income levels, forecasting probably won't achieve it, or forecasting definitely won't achieve it. And then table 5 provides some of the kind of supporting information. So the stats that support the financial position, and the movement on those. And actually in a lot of those cases, they're relatively positive. So whilst parking is still struggling to return to pre-pandemic levels, the number of uses and the income per use of those car parks is still going up. And as you see at the top of that table, there's quite a phenomenal increase in the level of number of leisure centre visits compared to the first half of last year, which is probably what you'd expect to be happening. The other thing just to flag to you, after publishing this report for this committee, there were 4 debts in relation to housing benefit that we identified, which were required write-off of more than £10,000 for each of them. So in the cabinet version of support, we have included those. So the debts are, one of them's for £54,000, one of them's for £17,000, one's for £22,000, one's for £15,000. In 2 of the cases, the individual is unfortunately deceased. One of them's in an individual voluntary arrangement in place, so therefore will not be paying the debt back to us. And one of them, as a result of a court decision in their favour, is therefore not going to pay the money back to us. So in all those cases, they've been referred to cabinet for those right debts to be written off because they're not going to be collectible. In all those 4 cases, they are old debts, and there is a full bad debt provision applied to them. So when we come to review the bad debt provision at the end of the year, the amounts will offset each other, and therefore there's no impact on the general fund. So no financial impact, but in accordance with finance regs, it does require cabinet to write those off and approve those given the value of them. So because they came out just after we divulged the report, didn't want to wait and just leave them sitting around until the next cabinet report. So I felt just get them into the cabinet report and then update you verbally on those. That's what I wanted to highlight on the report, but obviously there's a lot of detail in there, so I always welcome any questions or comments on it.
Thank you, Ian. Have we any questions for Ian on this subject? Nope. Nope, we haven't. Okay, the recommendations are the Finance and Audit and Risk Committee note and provide recommendations to the Cabinet on the half-yearly risk management update. Have we any comments on this to pass on to Cabinet? Okay. The Finance and Audit and Risk Committee note and provide recommendations to the Cabinet for the review of risk management framework. That Finance and Audit Risk Committee comment on the type of risk management training they would like to see going forward. Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you. It's these new glasses. I can't see a thing. Sorry. Right, let's try this again. And yeah, the Cabinet note this report. The Cabinet approves the changes to the 22-23 general fund budget. As identified in Table 3 and paragraph 8.2, a £270,000 decrease in net expenditure. The Cabinet notes that the changes are 23 to 24 general fund budget, as identified in Table 3, paragraph 8.2, a total of 69k increase in net expenditure, and this will be incorporated in the draft revenue budget of 23-24. This report is presented to FAR for comment before referral to Cabinet. And we haven't got any comments as far as I can see. Has anybody got it? No. But we'll refer it to Cabinet. Yeah. So we vote on that then, yes. So we're voting on to refer this report to Cabinet. Louis, can you take the vote, please? Oh, yeah. Yes. I propose a clever seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Right. Louis, can we take that to vote?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you, Louis. Moving on to item 14, the second quarter investment strategy, capital and treasury review 22-23, and Ian Cooper to present.
Thank you, Chair. This is another one that's going to Cabinet next week. So again, looking for any comments or otherwise in terms of referring it on to Cabinet to consider. So all the recommendations do relate to Cabinet decisions. Just going to pick out again a few highlights in the report. If I start off with table 8.4, which is on page 264, which details the proposals around capital schemes that are being slipped into future years, and some sort of quite overall some very large numbers in there, mainly being made up of the museum and commercial storage, where it's not expected the bill will start in this year, will now start in during next year, and therefore the amounts are being slipped into the following years. The next one is table 3, and that focuses on schemes being delivered this year, but where there's been a change in the costs. And I think particularly noteworthy is the first one, where I guess it's a sign of construction cost inflation. Lots of increases in costs in there, and affecting the viability of some of those measures, but also increasing the cost of others still viable, but costing more than we thought they would. And equally a bit of an increase on the soft play provision at North Arch Leisure Centre and getting that built out. Overall, due to the kind of the slippage on that capital, that we have got more money to invest. And as I said previously, interest rates are increasing, and that is demonstrated in the Treasury position, which is what starts in paragraph 8.9 onwards. What I think you'll see evident from paragraphs 8.12 and 8.13, there are a few banks and building societies that are basically paying more on average than the DMO. That's the sort of government place we can invest money. We've got when we have surplus cash, and we are essentially full with those banks and building societies. In terms of our treasury strategy, we can have up to 5 million of each of those, and we have got 5 million of each of those. And then the remainder is going to the DMO, because that's actually paying reasonable rates of return in terms of investments against some of the other banks and building societies. Local authorities are not paying any returns at all, really, much lower than the average across banks and building societies. So that's why we currently have no investments with banks with any local authorities. Obviously, a lot of detail in the appendices, but particularly Appendix B. But I'm not going to go for that in detail. But I will happily take any questions or comments in advance. You decide whether to sort of recommend that onto Cabinet.
Thank you, Ian. Do we have any comments or questions for Ian on this subject? No, we don't. Okay. So this this report is presented to FAR to comment on before referral to the Cabinet, and we're sure there's no questions or any comments at this point. Okay. Then can I have a proposer for taking this forward to Cabinet? Councillor Weeder, seconder, please. Councillor Hinchcliffe. Can we take it to the vote, Louis?
Chair, that's carried.
Thank you. Moving on to item 15, the draft budget 23-24, and Ian Cooper to present.
Thank you, Chair. And then the final report of the ones that are going to Cabinet. So again, recommendations are for Cabinet, but for you to ask questions or whatever in advance of making recommendations to Cabinet in relation to those. So this is the part of the overall budget process, which starts the medium-term financial strategy, which gets presented to Council in September. We then go away and look for savings and investment ideas and also new capital programme items, which go to the confidential budget workshop at the beginning of November. The output of those budget workshops then comes to Cabinet in December, and this is this report, which essentially takes those items, any comments that came out of those budget workshops, and also provides an update in terms of any funding, which usually means the autumn statement, and sometimes we get to this where we can provide a verbal update on the draft local government settlements. But as I'll come on to in a minute, that's not really the case this time. So in terms of the matters considered by those budget workshops and the recommendations to Cabinet, whilst there were lots of questions coming out of both budget workshops, both the Joint Administration and the Opposition workshops, there were no recommendations from either of those workshops in terms of either positive or negative, I guess, comments in terms of saying definitely do this or definitely don't do that. But that's fairly normal. So, yeah, a blank sheet for Cabinet to consider those proposals, and to note that the total value of those proposals does exceed the target that was set in the medium-term financial strategy. So that's a positive sign in terms of if they'll get adopted, we will meet that target. In terms of where we sit in relation to the autumn statement, the main takeaway from that was that councils are being given increased flexibility to increase council tax by up to 3%, whereas previously been up to 2% or £5 for a Band D equivalent property. For us, we've got a position whereby 2% and £5 are pretty much the same thing. So 3% does give us more additional income if we choose to increase it by 3% rather than 2%. The report notes that there will be a strong usage by government on the assumption that we will have increased it by 3% in terms of determining our future funding. And that for us now relates to how much business rates we get to retain. And so therefore, I wouldn't say we're forced into it, but there is a strong need for us to maintain our financial sustainability to increase council tax by 3%, and that is the recommendation this report has been put forward to Cabinet to consider. The table in 8.4 shows the financial impact of that. We are not talking huge numbers, but we are at a stage where, based on future forecasts, every bit helps, and £100,000 of extra income every year ongoing is essentially a lot of money over that time. Those sections also cover the increase in our council tax base, which has gone up compared to previous years. So that also generates more income for us. And that is also detailed in that same table in paragraph 8.4. The other thing to note in relation to announcements and government, we have now been told that the local government draft settlement will be announced on Thursday, the 22nd of December. So nothing to say on that at this stage, because we're nowhere near the 22nd of December just yet. We were also told that there was likely to be an interim announcement between the autumn statement and the draft settlement. Nothing has come out from that yet. So I will continue to wait with bated breath and hope we get something, some indications. It's always nice to get told as early as possible what funding streams might look like for future years. But yeah, we'll wait and see. And if I can, I'll provide a verbal update to Cabinet, but it may even come out after that, or may never materialise at all. So as ever, a bit of guesswork. We are hoping, it has been sort of muted, that maybe any announcements in terms of that draft settlement may cover more than 1 year. There may be a bit of indication about what funding will be for 24-25 as well as 23-24. That's always nice. We've been dealing with a series of 1-year settlements for many, many years now. Almost forgotten the days when we used to have multi-year settlements. So that's kind of position we're in overall in terms of funding. The rest of the report details where we sit, a few updates on inflation and the overall position, and also capital proposals. But I'll leave it there in terms of introduction to the report, and ask for any comments or queries before being referred on to Cabinet.
Thanks, Ian. Are there any comments or questions for Ian on this draft budget 23-24? And the answer is no. Okay. This report is presented to FAR to comment before referral to the Cabinet. We have no questions or further comments for Ian. I propose that we refer this to Cabinet. Can I have a seconder? Yeah, Councillor Hinchcliffe. Louis, can you take us to the vote, please?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you, Louis. And this takes us to item 16, which is the last item on the agenda. The possible agenda items for future meetings. Open forum. Anybody got some comments or what you'd like to see in the future? Subjects, training, anything from anybody? Yes, I'd like to see on Pentana. Yeah, yes. But I believe we're also having another training session before the next meeting. Is that right, Ian?
Yes, Chair. We did discuss last time about doing a session on internal audit, and Chris Wood from SIAS doing a presentation to us before next meeting, similar to what we did this evening with as you said, anti-fraud. So as part of this meeting, if you are still wanting to go ahead with that, we'll go with that, and then happy to either arrange something separately in terms of Pentana and that risk tool, or we can look at the March meeting for that if you wanted just to always sort of stick with having it before each of these meetings, whichever suits you best, or a combination of the two. Happy to also just sort of get the information out to you by email on Pentana, and then see how it goes from there. And if there are more questions or desire for sort of more in-depth training, we can do that prior to the March meeting.
Any comments from the floor? Agree? Yes, we'd like to accept your offer then, Ian. I personally like the idea of having although I got held up by a neighbour blocking my road this evening, and it was a little bit late arriving. I do like the idea of doing the training before the meeting myself. Has anybody got any comments on that? Nope. Yeah. Harry?
It suits me rather having a separate one.
Yeah. Consent? Yeah, yeah. Is that okay, Ian? Yeah. Is there any
Yeah,
other?
thanks, Louise, yeah.
I mean, there's an awful lot to do far, isn't there? There's lots of different subjects and things. I'm sure there's more things that we could delve in a little bit deeper to understand more. Has anybody got a particular area that they would like to know more about at this stage? Well, we can always take this up on the next meeting anyway. In that case, I thank all of our speakers and thank you, the members, and thank John for attending, and of course our officers for this evening. And I will close the meeting at 21:01.